Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ghost Vault, where we dive deep into the most unbelievable and chilling stories from Reddit. Today I've got a story for you that's bound to send shivers down your spine. It's a wild ride about trust, deception, and an unbelievable twist you won't see coming. So grab a seat, hit that like button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you never miss out on these jaw-dropping stories. I never thought I'd be the guy with a story like this, the kind you read on Reddit and think, wow, this sounds too wild to be true, but the thing is, truth often outdoes fiction. And in my case, the truth was more terrifying and surreal than I ever could have imagined. It started innocently enough. 2 years ago, I met Emily at an art gallery, a local event that I had only gone to because a friend dragged me along. I wasn't even into art back then, but Emily made me rethink that. She was standing in front of this strange, abstract painting, one that looked like someone had just thrown paint at the canvas randomly, and she was smiling at it like she could see something I couldn't. "Do you like it?" she asked when she caught me staring at the painting and probably at her too. I laughed, awkward as hell. I have no idea what I'm looking at, to be honest. She smiled. This knowing smile that drew me in instantly. It's not about understanding it, it's about feeling it. I didn't know what she meant at the time, but I nodded anyway. She had this energy about her, like she was in on a secret that the rest of the world was too distracted to notice. We started talking, and before I knew it, we'd spent nearly 2 hours wandering around the gallery together. I found out she was into meditation, philosophy, and spiritual things I never really thought much about. But the way she talked about it made it sound fascinating, like she had figured out something that I hadn't even considered. A few days later, we went on our first date, and things escalated quickly from there. Emily was magnetic. She had a calming presence that made all my stress disappear. Work sucked, life was chaotic. But being around her made everything feel manageable. It wasn't long before we were spending almost every day together. By month 6, we were living together in my small apartment, and for a while it was perfect. But then the weird stuff started. At first it was little things. Emily had always been spiritual, like I said, but over time she got more intense about it. She began talking about energy fields, chakras, and how the universe had a grand plan. She spent hours meditating, sometimes late into the night, and I just thought it was her way of coping with stress. Honestly, I didn't pay much attention. I had my own things going on, work was crazy, and I was up for a big promotion. I figured everyone has their quirks, right? Who was I to judge? Then she started going to these gatherings with a group of people she met through her meditation circles. She'd head out every Thursday evening, and when I asked her about it, she would just say it was a group of spiritual seekers like her, people who believed in personal growth and connecting with the universe. I didn't think much of it. Emily was happier than ever, and it wasn't like she was doing anything dangerous. Also, I thought, the real changes began about a year into our relationship. Emily started speaking in this strange, cryptic way, like she knew something the rest of us didn't. She'd make comments about how the world was out of balance and how there was a great awakening coming, where only those who were prepared would ascend to a higher state of being. She'd say things like, "You feel it too, don't you?" That pull. The energy shifting. I'd laugh it off, telling her I had no idea what she was talking about. But she was dead serious. She'd get this distant look in her eyes, almost trance-like, and tell me, "You will soon. The world's about to change." One night, after one of her usual gatherings, she came home later than normal, and I could tell something was off immediately. Her eyes were wide, almost manic, and she had this strange smile plastered on her face. She sat down beside me and took my hand. "I've reached a new level," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "I've seen things you wouldn't believe. The universe, it's speaking to me, guiding me." I tried to get her to explain what she meant, but she just kept saying things like, "You'll understand when it's your time and we're all part of the plan, but only the chosen will ascend." At this point, I was starting to get genuinely worried. I chalked it up to some kind of spiritual crisis, or maybe she was getting too deep into the meditation stuff. But I still didn't press her. I trusted her. I loved her. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I finally began to understand the depth of what was happening. Emily invited me to one of her group's gatherings. She had never done that before, and at first I wasn't interested. but she was insistent, saying that I needed to see for myself what she was experiencing. She told me it would open my eyes to a higher truth. She was so passionate about it that I eventually agreed. The gathering was held in a house on the outskirts of town, way out in the middle of nowhere. The place gave me the creeps as soon as we pulled up. It was an old, rundown mansion, the kind you'd expect to see in a horror movie. I even joked about it to Emily, but she just smiled and said, "You'll understand soon." Inside, the atmosphere was even worse. The house was dimly lit by candles, and there was this strange incense in the air that made me feel lightheaded. Around 20 people were gathered in a large room, all sitting cross-legged on the floor in a circle. Emily guided me to a spot beside her, and we sat down. In the center of the room, there was a large, intricately drawn symbol on the floor, something that looked like a cross between a pentagram and an ancient rune. My skin prickled just looking at it. At the head of the circle was a man who looked to be in his 60s with long silver hair and a deeply unsettling presence. He introduced himself as Master Enoch and began talking about the Great Transformation. That was coming, how the world was on the brink of collapse, and only those who were truly enlightened would survive. He spoke with such intensity that I could feel the room shifting, the energy becoming more charged with every word he said. The people around me were nodding, some even whispering under their breath in a language I didn't understand. Emily was among them, her eyes closed, swaying slightly as if she were in a trance. It was then that I realized just how far gone she was. At one point, Master Enoch's eyes locked onto mine, and he smiled. "You're new to our circle, but I see potential in you. You can feel the energy, can't you?" I shook my head, trying to laugh it off, but inside I was panicking. I wanted to leave, but something kept me rooted in place. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was fear. Either way, I stayed through the entire session, which lasted almost 2 hours. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before, half meditation, half ritual. There was chanting, some kind of blood oath I didn't fully understand, and this overwhelming sense of dread that settled over me like a thick fog. When it was finally over, I told Emily I wasn't feeling well and needed to go home. She looked disappointed but didn't argue. On the drive back, I asked her what exactly the group believed in, and that's when she started talking about the Ascension. How their goal was to transcend this physical world and reach a higher plane of existence. According to her, the world was doomed, and only the enlightened few would be able to escape. I told her it sounded like a cult, half joking, but she didn't laugh. "It's not a cult," she said, her voice low and serious. "It's the truth." Over the next few weeks, things spiraled out of control. Emily became more and more distant, spending nearly all her free time with the group. She'd come home late, sometimes not at all, and when she was home, she was constantly preaching about their beliefs, trying to get me to come to more gatherings. I refused every time. The final straw came one night when she came home in the middle of the night, her clothes dirty and torn, her eyes wild. She told me that the time had come, the Ascension was near, and she wanted me to join her in the group's final preparations. When I pressed her for details, she got cagey. But I finally managed to get it out of her. They were planning a mass ritual to free their souls and transcend to the higher plane. That's when I knew I had to leave. I told her I couldn't do it, that I wasn't interested in whatever she and the group were planning. She didn't argue or try to convince me. Instead, she just looked at me with this strange, empty expression and said, "You'll regret it when you're left behind." The next morning, she was gone. I tried calling her, but her phone was off. Days passed and there was no word from her. It wasn't until a week later that I found out what had happened. The news was everywhere: a mass suicide in a remote cabin in the woods. 12 people, including Emily, were found dead, all victims of some twisted ritual they believed would help them ascend to a higher realm. I was devastated. The woman I loved, the woman I had planned to spend the rest of my life with, had been brainwashed into joining a death cult. I couldn't believe it. I still can't. I've spent the last few months trying to process everything. How did I miss the signs? How did the person I loved become someone I didn't even recognize? There are no easy answers. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if there was something I could have done to stop her. But in the end, I guess you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Wow, I told you this story was going to be intense. If you enjoyed it and want more unbelievable tales like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to The Ghost Vault for more gripping Reddit stories every week. And don't forget to drop a comment below. What would you do if you found yourself in a situation like this? Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.